Have you ever wondered how scientists know they've found something real and not just, I don't know, a random fluke? Well, it turns out they have a very specific set of tools for the job, and today we're going to crack open that toolkit.
I mean, think about it. You drink a cup of coffee and you feel like, wow, I'm getting so much done. But is it actually the coffee that's doing the heavy lifting?
Or could it just be a coincidence? Maybe you just had a really good night's sleep for once. This right here is the central challenge in all of science. And today, we're going to explore the super powerful statistical tools they use to separate what's real from what's just noise.
So where does every single experiment even begin? Well, it starts with a kind of default assumption, a baseline idea that scientists set up specifically so they can try to knock it down.
It's called the null hypothesis, and you could just think of it as the nothing is happening here position. It's that skeptical voice that says, nope, no connection, no effect, nothing to see here. A scientist's job is basically to collect enough hard evidence to prove that skeptical voice wrong.
Okay, so let's see this whole idea in action with our first tool. It's called the t-test. We're going to use it to answer a pretty simple question. Does the pH level of soil actually affect how many seeds sprout?
And here's a fantastic piece of trivia for you. The t-test was actually invented by a guy named William Gossett while he was working as a brewer for Guinness. Yep, he needed a reliable way to check the quality of small batches of barley. So you can thank good beer for great statistics.
All right, let's set up our experiment. We've got two groups of pots. Group 1 has some acidic soil, and Group 2 has neutral soil. Now remember our null hypothesis, right? It's that this pH difference is going to have zero effect on how many seeds germinate. Our mission is to see if we can gather enough evidence to reject that idea.
So we planted our seeds, we've waited around, and now we have the raw numbers. This table just shows how many seeds popped up in each pot for both groups. And if you just glance at it, it's kind of just a jumble of numbers, isn't it? It's really tough to see a clear pattern just by looking.
So, the very first step to finding a pattern is to calculate the average, or mean, for each group. Okay, so the acidic soil averaged about 39 seeds, while the neutral soil averaged over 43. So there is a difference. But, and this is the crucial question, is that difference actually big enough to matter, or could it just be random chance?
To answer that, we can't just look at the averages alone. We also need to know how spread out the data is within each group. This idea is called standard deviation. Think of it this way. If all your results are tightly clustered together, your average is pretty reliable. But if your numbers are all over the place, that average starts to mean a lot less.
This is where the t-test formula comes in. It takes all of this information, the difference between our two averages and the spread of the data within each group, and it boils it all down to one single powerful number. We call it a t-value. And for our little seed experiment, that value is 3.04.
So what in the world does 3.04 actually mean? Well, on its own, not much. We have to compare it to something called a critical value. This is a number statisticians figure out based on how confident we want to be, and usually that's 95% confident. For our experiment, that critical value is 2.15. Honestly, the best way to think about it is like a high jump bar. To prove our result is significant, our t-value has to clear that bar.
And look at that. Our value, 3.04, is higher than the critical value of 2.15. We cleared the bar. This gives us the statistical firepower we need to officially reject the null hypothesis. We can now say with 95% confidence that the difference we saw wasn't just some random luck. Soil pH really does have a significant effect on seed germination.
Okay, so the t-test is perfect when you're comparing two totally separate groups, like a drug versus a placebo in a medical trial. But what if you want to find a connection within a single group? For that, we need a different tool. Let's take a look at Spearman's rank, which helps us answer questions like, is a sunflower's height somehow related to how wide its stem is?
Visually, what we're looking for is one of three possible patterns. Do height and width go up together? That would be a positive correlation. Or does one go up while the other goes down? That's a negative correlation. Or maybe there's just no relationship at all. Spearman's rank is going to give us a single number, somewhere between +1 and -1, that tells us exactly what's going on.
All right, here's our data from 8 different sunflowers. Now, instead of calculating averages like before, the first thing we do here is rank everything. We just look at the height column, find the shortest sunflower, and give it a rank of 1. The next shortest gets a 2, all the way up to the tallest at rank 8. And then we do the exact same thing for the stem width.
The next part is just some simple arithmetic. For each sunflower, we figure out the difference between its height rank and its width rank. We call that little difference d. Then we just square that number, and that gives us our final column, d squared. Easy enough.
And just like we did with the t-test, we now plug all these calculated numbers into the Spearman's rank formula. It does all the heavy lifting for us, and out pops our answer, the correlation coefficient. For our sunflowers, that number is 0.905.
So what does a 0.905 tell us? Well, remember, a perfect positive correlation is +1. Our value is incredibly close to that. This tells us there is a very strong positive correlation here. We've found a really clear connection in our data. The wider a sunflower's stem is, the taller it's likely to be.
Okay, so we've got a tool for comparing groups and another one for finding connections. But both of these really powerful tests are built on one single universal foundation. It's a concept that applies to every measurement ever taken, whether you're using a simple ruler or the James Webb Space Telescope. And that foundation is called uncertainty. See, every single measurement we make has a built-in limit, and it's based on how precise our tool is. You can measure the thickness of a coin with a regular ruler and get a decent estimate, but a micrometer will give you a far more precise reading with way less uncertainty. Choosing the right tool is all about deciding how sure you need to be.
And scientists have some really clear rules of thumb for this. For most analog tools, like an old-school thermometer, the uncertainty is half of the smallest marking. For a digital scale, it's just the last digit it can show you. And then you've got exceptions. For things that involve human reaction time, like a stopwatch, we have to add a little buffer for that too. It's all about being honest and upfront about the limits of your data.
Okay, let's do a quick recap of the main tools. First up, if you want to compare two different groups to see if there's a real meaningful difference, you're going to use a t-test.
Next, if you want to find out if two things are connected within the same group, you're going to want to use Spearman's rank. And finally, the most important one of all, the absolute foundation of good science. For any conclusion you ever make, you always have to ask yourself, how certain are we?
So, I'll leave you with a question to chew on. Think about your own life. Maybe it is that morning coffee. Maybe it's your workout routine, or the way you study for an exam. What's one assumption you live by every single day that, if you had the right tools, you could actually put to the test?